Thank you very much. It's the grandfather, actually. I'll just get rid of this. You really love their garlic, as you know. So, I was born in the north of Italy, in a small town. Came here in 1961. It was a very different country back then. My mother, back home, back in Italy, would cook all the meals from scratch. She would make all our clothes. She was one of those classic sort of Italian women that would make everything from soap to, she would spin silk. She had her own silkworms, you know, from the mulberry trees. She would spin silk. She would make everything. So when we came to Australia, we got, well, we kids didn't get a big shock because...
Did she make her own bone broth?
That wasn't called bone broth, it's just called broth. Bone broth is almost a, you know, it's almost a brand now.
Yeah.
You know, but it's really only called broth. Anyway, she would make, yes, all her broths, and she'd always have something, you know. So back then, all the kids, all my friends would come, and they couldn't believe it because at home they had boiled lamb and vegetables that were murdered. Now this was the western suburbs of Sydney. So you're talking about, you know, working class, but you know, we've kind of grown up. We've kind of grown up. I remember back then that I was out shopping with my mother once, and you know, there was my brother and I. We were just mucking around, you know, probably belting each other up or something. And she was walking along, and suddenly we didn't see her anymore. And we sort of tracked back, and she was in a shop, and in the window of the shop there was this piece of meat, and she was pointing to the meat inside the shop, and you know, she got the bloke in the shop to wrap it up for her, and he took it home. It was a pet shop, and this was a piece of horse meat, right? And horse meat is something quite, quite special for Italians, especially Northern Italians.
And for Germans.
And for Germans, that's right. Not for Australians.
Is it peasanty?
No.
Or is it peasanty?
What class is it?
What class?
Yeah, as in,
What do you mean? Was it a racehorse or a nag? Oh, you mean that the people that eat it? The hierarchy.
Yeah.
No, well, horse meat in Italy is eaten by. It's given to people who have trouble digesting because it's a very lean meat. It's akin to, say, something like kangaroo, which is quite lean, you know. So all sorts of. I have to say, in Italy, we don't have a tradition of haute cuisine like they do in France. There's no tradition of top cuisine, of high cuisine. Everybody basically eats the same sort of peasant food, you know. Sure, you know, rich people can afford to, you know, their truffles and that, but it's the truffle hunters who are the peasants who go out and get them, but they also use those truffles. Now, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that when we came over, we didn't just bring our suitcases, we brought an entire culture with us. This is something that you as producers need to understand. You're not just growing, beef cows, or you're not just growing garlic. You're actually growing a certain culture. The culture of garlic is very, very important. It actually relates back to a cuisine. And where does that cuisine come from? It comes from a culture. This is something that we didn't find here, and as a lot of migrants that came here after the Second World War, they didn't find a food culture here. Now, I'm not saying that that is the case with every single person back in that time, but the norm was, in my experience, living in the western suburbs of Sydney, that was the case. You know, food wasn't something that was as important as we all think of it today in this room. It was something that, well, it was very British. There we go. It was very British. That's where that culture came from. We eat just so we can survive, but nothing else. Flavour was not of paramount importance. It was sustenance. But really, eating and food is one of the most enjoyable things you can do, and some people put it on the same level as that, you know, sex. And it's almost a precursor sometimes. Anyway, I opened my first restaurant in 1983. 1983. In 1983, I was working with my mother, my wife, and my brother. What we wanted to do was recreate my family's cooking for the restaurant table. And you know, in many ways, we kind of succeeded, but we needed to find certain things that we could cook with, because without produce, restaurants are nothing. So once again, producers are very important to restaurants, to restaurateurs. In about 1988, now I grew up with a very good friend of mine at the time was Neil Perry, still is. We don't see much of each other anymore because we all have businesses to run. But back then we were very, very close. His first wife had a cousin who was a sheep farmer down in near Junee, a place called Illabo. And we got together and we said amongst ourselves, what do you think if we approach him and see if we can get some suckling lambs? Now you have to understand that at that time, once again, Australians didn't eat suckling lamb. It was only in the 70s that they started eating large lamb. It was pretty much, you know, hogget and large sheep that Australians ate. Lamb was deemed as fairly tasteless, and suckling lamb was like basically drinking water. His first thing, Tony Lehman was his name. His first thing was, why do you want that? You know, it doesn't taste like anything. Oh no, we like to, you know, try and work out some recipes, because, you know, we have recipes that, from my background, you know, Roman lamb, a barbecue as it's called, is one of the great specialties. And so eventually he sent us some samples. No, it's too big, they've eaten grass, haven't they? Well, yes. Sorry, but we can't stop them from eating grass. Well, you have to stop them from eating grass. So it was this to and fro thing. Eventually, he started getting it right. The lambs were the specs that we wanted. They were 5 to 8 kilos, dressed weight. They would come with a little stocking. They were delivered on time. I ended up using 15 a week. Neil, around about the same. And then a couple of other restaurants started using them. He was doing 200 lambs a week. Now, then to do that, we said to him, how do you manage to keep all these lambs going? He says, well, I can't do it in January, February. You're going to have to give me a break then. But what he used to do was he worked out, and the ewes ovulate according to the length of the day. So what he would do is he would increase the length of the day and put these ewes in some sort of pen and trick them into ovulating. So anyway, it's very complicated. But we ended up getting, for many years, for about 15 years, we ended up getting lambs from Tony and Vicky Lehman down in Junee. The point of that is that you need to, as a supplier, as a producer, you need to talk to your market to see what they want. It's no use producing something and then not having a market that wants it. Garlic is a huge problem in this country because right now there's really no there's very little Australian garlic that you can buy. You can buy Russian or elephant garlic all year round, but the really strong, normal garlic, what's really called garlic, you can't buy it. It's really difficult to buy at the moment. There is one lady in Tasmania who's worked out a way of doing it. Her name is Letitia Ware, and she's got a number of different varieties of garlic. She's a soil scientist, and she's invested heavily in not only the soil, but also in the drying equipment that she has. And so she can go all the way until November and supply garlic to the market. Now, I know that it's difficult in this part of Australia to grow that sort of garlic and to have it stay good all the way through, but she's now, the last garlic I bought from her at the farm gate, $38 a kilo. So if that's an incentive enough to try and find a solution, and her and a couple of other people have got the market to themselves right now. The only garlic that you're going to buy is imported from Mexico, China, Argentina, etc., etc. And it's full of pesticides and pretty awful poisons. So there is a market that wants that sort of garlic, and the price is going to go up until we get the new bulk crop of garlic later on in the year, towards the end of the year. I know this part of the coast has some great seafood. There is an opportunity, and it's actually just starting up. There's a lot of mullet that runs along here during the season. The Italians have this thing called bottarga, which is air-dried mullet roe. We cure it when the season comes at both of my restaurants, and we get some of the mullet roe, fresh mullet roe, from this part of the coast. And basically, once you've air-dried it, salted, air-dried it, you can sell it to a market, which is restaurants and specialty food stores, for around about $60 or $70 a kilo. Now that is something that traditionally Australian fishermen use as bait. So that is an opportunity. You all know the truffles, the opportunity of truffles. Well, I think that horse has bolted. If you'd sort of invested in them 10 years ago, that would have been fine. I work with a whole lot of chestnut growers down in Victoria. My daughter is always reminding me that, and telling her friends that I am the chestnut ambassador for Australia. She's very proud of that. But she says it's half joking, but you know, the chestnut ambassador is a big deal. But it's a whole bunch of small growers down in Myrtleford, Bright, Wandilligong. That's where about 80% of Australia's chestnuts come from. I have two friends there who had a chestnut farm. They were growing chestnuts up until about 5 or 6 years ago. They had a chestnut blight go through their farm. It was quarantined, and then all their trees were uprooted and burnt. A lot of people would have thought, okay, would have just said, okay, we're going to get out of farming, don't want to do it anymore. They've actually come back. They are now growing yuzu.
Yuzu?
Yuzu.
What is?
Mizu yuzu. You don't know what yuzu is? Yuzu is a citrus, which is Japanese grated, and they also use the juice. They are getting $40 a kilo for fresh yuzu.
Is it a lemon or an orange?
It's a citrus. It's a mandarin-ish. Yes. They are now exporting it to Japan. They are also growing bergamot. You know what bergamot is? Also a citrus. Who likes Earl Grey tea? Earl Grey tea is made with bergamot oil. The largest producer of bergamot is Italy, right? But they're doing it here. They also are growing Keynote. Keynote is another citrus. Now I know that yuzu is being grown somewhere up in Byron Bay, so I think this area may also be an interesting area for yuzu. You can Google all these things. They're all really interesting things. Now, look, I know that this is a great area for milk production. You have wonderful milk, and Norco do such a great job in keeping the farmers afloat. You know, they're not. They don't engage in bastardry, shall we say. They are a really good company and they produce really good milk. But one of the things that I've always wondered, not only about this area, but other parts of Australia, is why we don't have more great artisan cheeses. I mean, we produce really good cheese on toast cheese. You know, cheddar, slice. You know, it's wonderful, it's great, and we sell heaps of it. But the promise of the 80s, when the Artisan Cheesemakers Association started, was that we would have all these wonderful cheeses 20 years, 30 years down the road. I think you could probably count on two hands the world-class cheese that we have in Australia. You could probably go Pine cheddar, which is a cloth-bound aged cheddar. There's a cheese called C2 that comes from Bruny Island in Tasmania. There is La Luna, which is a goat's cheese, which is phenomenal. Why don't we put the milk to use instead of selling it?
What do you think?
I'm telling you what I think.
Is it too much hard work?
Well, you know, hard work is not lacking.
What about medals? Reward? There's no reward for it?
Well, reward has to be financial reward. Has to be financial reward. So, you know, what all I'm doing is saying to you that there are opportunities, you
Go
know,
for it.
and you should go for it. I
Give it a
think,
go.
look, bananas are a case in point. This area, yeah. Beth thought that I would mention bananas, and bananas are a real thing with me because, you know, bananas are from this part of Australia are fantastic. You know, I think they're the best bananas in the country. I've heard that the Western Australian bananas are pretty good, but you know, the bananas around here, from here, the Coffs Coast, and they come down to here, are fantastic. Why don't we see them in shops as Coffs Coast bananas? We don't. They just get sent to the banana sheds in at Flemington, and they get sold as bananas. I posted a picture on Instagram the other day, and I'd found in my local shop in Sydney, Coffs Coast bananas. First time I've ever seen them, and they were fantastic. They're beautiful. You can tell them they're smaller than the Queensland bananas. They taste better. They're more yellow inside, and I don't know. They're just better in all ways. Which leads me to branding. I think branding is really, really important. I think there could be branding for the Macleay Valley. I think that's a brand that should be pushed. And then individual produce, whether it's garlic, whether it's beef, whether it's milk, whether it's ducks or chickens,
Rabbits.
or whatever, rabbits. Yeah. Oh, I've got a story about rabbits. When we first opened the restaurant, 1983. Rabbits are a passion of mine. I love them. I think they're treated like chickens in Italy. You know, chicken is not a really widely eaten meat in Italy because they're expensive, because they're grown properly. Here in Australia, it's the cheapest meat because it's industrially farmed. And it's pumped full of hormones to make them grow really quickly, except for, yes, over there. Fantastic, and they actually do a much. Their chicken is so good. It's better than a lot of the certified organic chickens. I kid you not. But anyway, getting back to the rabbits, I started inquiring about rabbits, and we found out that there was a supply of rabbits back in 1983. These Angora rabbits were raised for laboratories, to be used in experiments in laboratories. And when they had leftover rabbits, they would sell them into restaurants, and we would buy them.
Angora rabbits?
Yes, they were used for experiments.
Angora?
Well, you know, the fluffy ones, not the wild ones. The nice fluffy ones with all the meat on them. They used to call them Angora rabbits. Anyway, I love this man. I love you too.
He's my husband, and I'm trying to say to him,
He's incredulous. No, basically the illustration is how far a wog will go to get his food, you know. But we use the Macleay Valley rabbits in all our restaurants. They are fantastic. So look, I won't ramble on too much longer. Just a couple of things. Look, what you need to do is you find the market for your produce. Sometimes it's a matter of asking what the market wants. talk to the leaders in the market to find out what they want. Transport. Transport is of utmost importance. It may be the most difficult hurdle for you to climb to get it to market, simply because Australia is huge. It's a big country, and markets are generally a long way away from producers. So you need to work out how to get your product to the market. Now, I was talking to Beth and Hayden, and they've found a way. You know, they take their stuff to a central point, and then it's distributed from there. But you know, that's done through every week. It's a chore. It's part of what they do. And then there's marketing. Marketing is a big deal. Now, you guys have the council, the local council, to support you in this, because I heard the magic word marketing before. Is that right? That's right. That's really, really important. And all of you, as producers, if you want to build your brand, you need to be on social media. You need to be. You can't say, oh, you know, I don't do that. Oh, I don't want to do that. You have to. If you want to communicate with lots and lots of people, you have to be on social media. I think that's basically all I've got to say. Unless somebody has.
I want to ask you.
Yes, certainly.
In all due respect.
Yes.
To your wonderful northern Italian cuisine.
Yes.
How do you? What can you tell us about the new sort of thing of fusion cooking? Of all
Fusion,
foods coming in from everywhere.
But this is what Australia,
China,
India. Yeah, but this is what Australia is.
Yes.
This is what Australia.
Yes.
Australia does not have its own cuisine. It does, but we've hidden it and we've ignored it, and it's got to do with the first Australians, right? But we've ignored it for a long time. We have to have someone from overseas come and tell us that all of our wonderful, you know, Davidson plums, finger limes, you know, all our native bunya nuts, you know, macadamia nuts. Ah, there you go. We were so stupid, we didn't think that anybody in the world would want macadamia nuts. The Hawaiians took the macadamia nuts and started growing them in Hawaii and broke the market in the world. And then we said, oh, people like them. And then we started growing macadamias for export. That's the sort of thing we need to, you know, look out for. Anyway, any other questions? We want to eat more food, don't we? Yes.